what is the mechanism that is malfunctioning or is taking a break in your brain? Do you know?
I wouldn't be able to explain that as much, just, you know, because I'm not a doctor. I can just tell you what I'm feeling at the time. And I feel a heightened connection with the universe when I'm ramping up. It is a health issue. This is like a sprained brain, like having a sprained ankle. And if someone has a sprained ankle, you're not gonna push on him more.
Right.
With us, once our brain gets to a point of spraining, people do everything to make it worse.
All along I can heal it. I go for the cast. I fall off a bass boat. And the concrete's very slow. And the concrete's very slow. All along the sidelines, big up. I'm over the dash. I'm having a bad, bad toe. But the berries still are calm. All along I can hear you, I can hear, I can hear. I can hear, I can hear crying. I can hear crying. I can hear, I can hear. I can hear, I can hear crying.
Whole projects did start out just kind of on, by myself, but all the support I've had and watching the music grow in the last 10 years because of those influences, and then also me realizing to relent and to give the reins to others made me feel more calm and more powerful at the same time.
So, this is oddly reflective, but essentially what this project has done for me has actually revamped my love for music and artwork. And just going about the whole experience was a great kind of eye-opening, very reflective thing. But essentially, I wanted to talk about sonic textures and creating art and what it means for somebody like me or like anybody else that has a mental disorder. No matter if you're thinking about like bad relationships, near-death experiences, many of the worst times of our lives, are perhaps the biggest sources of inspiration in our lives. It's a paradox in that way. A lot of what I think makes artistry profound is grasping that particular human essence. I think about Björk and how she rants about it on her record Homogenic, and she's like, these emotional landscapes, oh how they puzzle me. The riddle gets solved and you push me to the state of emergency. I think that's very wholesome, holistic. And I think the hardest thing about having a mental disorder is being in tune with yourself. Perhaps a little too much in tune. And still that has led to some of the greatest collections of art. The interesting part is that for that particular artist that experiences that, it doesn't really matter how it came to be, As an artist, and especially the troubled ones, I feel as though we simply create with no alternative motive. And the recognition, the accolades, the awards, the legacies, all that comes from when people are able to say they relate. And what has necessarily propelled me to this point was in fact my own history, and like others, it goes widely unknown. but made alive through creativity. One of my favorite artists once said that being bipolar is such a superpower, and I wholeheartedly agree. When I was 9, I pretty much resembled an adult, in my opinion. I woke up, I went to my job, which was school, I went to soccer, then football, then chess practice, I did my homework, and all my weekends were like cartoonless and busy. And that was pretty much the dynamic of my life and up until my sophomore year of high school. Yeah, that was my dynamic up until high school when circumstances forced me to leave. For me, there were no coming to age stories and tales and building romance that I could relate to. I was just weird. I lived in the middle of the woods, both literally and figuratively. And that was an interesting thing. I would say I measured my life through trophies and grades, and to me what those revealed was that I was ahead. And then that same year I attempted suicide at 9 years old, and I still to this day couldn't tell you why. But I credit music and art with saving my life in a way. As long as I can remember, I was always this high-functioning person within my family, and at least in my opinion, that's all that really mattered. My parents and I tried to get to the root of the problem, but it felt like I was just being dragged into theirs, and we even tried medicine. And I laugh because being the son of an immigrant, you come to quickly realize that my folk aren't really excited about the idea of Western science, And it all didn't really make sense. I was diagnosed with ADD at 10, acute depression by 12, and bipolar disorder ultimately at 16. And yet everything leading up to that moment didn't really matter to me until I started, or at least when I started to create. I used my experiences to draw, to write songs, and I channeled my obsessions into every detail and, reconfigured them. I remember my friend Julian Gray, who's now an artist in LA, he torrented me my first Ableton, and like all other agitated teens, I felt like this was something, and at that time I honestly began to feel. And after being in such a dark headspace for over half my life, producing, creating art, and whole environments from scratch, all of it made me comfortable with not always feeling my best. It took my mind and cradled it to where it was still. And I swear I'm not trying to be morbid, but I've always felt that I was bleeding into space, just like wavelengths of sound, the microscopic nature of light. Both of them are just so meticulously organized, but so uncontrollable. And fractaling and fractals are I would say an accurate depiction of what my mind is on a daily basis. As a result of my actions, my actions are literally continuously acting upon and being acted on. And I'm so hyper sensitive to it. And I say when I create, most of those sounds, because of that, most of the sounds I create waiting and saw at the joint. Now, most of the music I listen to and exchange is eclectic and warm, and it just fills up whatever void, whatever kind of, it's just something is really hard to explain, but when it presents itself. And so when I discovered Justin Vernon of Bon Iver, I was like, that's fucking crazy, He understands it, he lives it, and he loves what he is. He is from a very reserved background. He's dealt with his own insecurities. He has the work ethic of like million people, and it's always channeled into 20 to a million. And in that record was fucking incredible. I remember looking at it for the first time and I was immediately inspired. Justin created his own world and the manifestations of sonic texture and visuals, and it was just ridiculous, man. I did a little more research and I found that he actually used his producer, his engineer, along with him, used this thing called the Messina, and it's like a combination of software and hardware. And if you think about like vocoders and everything and how that stuff existed, he literally took it and made an adaptive living piece of binary code in a way, like if that, he took his voice, and when he sings into the Messina, it's different every time. It's by nature made to be as sporadic and random as what he is feeling. And if that's not a fucking cyborg, that's not a fucking cyborg, that's not, I don't know what is. It blows my mind. He is by far just my favorite artist.
Remember something. Hard but hurried away. When first I reached that last Sunday. Rolled down the yellow road. I remember something. Believing was easy, all I keep in my voice. And as certain as evening, and as now is not the time. So now I'm toiling with your blood, and I remember something, and be kissing on it, not thinking to last, and finally both your hands, a second song came past the glass, and oh, I know it felt right, 'cause I had you in my grasp, in my grasp. Oh yeah. Oh, we're gonna go and cry, 'cause it once might not mean something. No, a second glance, it is not something that we'll need. Only stare, and I have been left here in the reeds, and all I try to do is get my feet from the crease. 'Cause I see you, don't turn around, oh, you're my 18, turn